time to get into another review here today. Switching the gears back up again. We're going back to country music on this one. So, Unity Through Music, that's the segment here. We're going to be reviewing different songs from different genres of music that touch on a lot of what people in the country are experiencing coast to coast. Things that are affecting working class people. Things that we can get working class on the right and the left, the Greens, Libertarians, potentially together on, so that we can build true coalition. So the song today is Shuttin Detroit Down by John Rich. Now, if you know country music and you know who John Rich is, you know he's more famous known for the music group Big and Rich. So this was a song he did by himself outside of the Big and Rich group, just John Rich, and he's talking about but basically what's happening to some of these people. Now, for the record, this song came out like back after the whole GM thing. So this is about probably going on about 10 to 20 years at this point. Probably just a little bit over 10 years old at this point. So strong message though, but let's get into it. Let's see what this song is about.
Taught me in this country everyone's the same. You work hard for your dollar and you never pass the blame when it don't go your way. Now I see all these big shots whining on my evening news about how they're losing billions, and it's up to me and you to come running to rescue.
So, go ahead and break down what he just pointed out there. He pointed out, my daddy taught me that in this country everyone's the same. Means, going all the way back to the founding of our country. That thing Joe Biden stumbled up on, that all men are created equal. So, and that it's you work hard for your money, work hard for your dollar, and never pass the blame when it don't go your way. That means sometimes you're going to fail. And sometimes you could get cheated. Sometimes you could get screwed. But you know what? Pull yourself up and keep working hard. Don't let that tear you down. You know what I mean? No one's going to win all the time. But I'll give you a line from a movie. It's a great line from the movie The Crow. It can't rain all the time. So, just keep moving forward and don't sit around complaining that it's this person's fault or that person's fault. Just keep moving forward toward the positive direction. But that's what the working class has to do. And by the way, the elites tell the working class when they fall on their luck, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's been the talking point for years, right? But what's he just saying there? Now I'm hearing all these big shots whining on my evening news about how they're losing billions, and it's up to me and you to come running to their rescue, meaning the tax money we've paid in now has to bail them out. Why can't you wait a minute, what's the difference between you and me other than the fact I'm poor and you're rich? But I'm poor, and I have to pull myself up by my bootstraps, but you're rich, and you don't have to? Why? Because you wear loafers and don't have boots, so you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps? No. If I have to do it, you have to do it. Maybe run your company a little better. But when they know they can count on the government to bail them out, now that gives them more incentive to run their business, very, very, very bad, use bad business practices, waste, squander, and everything else, and not turn out good product. Make it with cheap crap or whatever it is. And that's what GM started doing. GM, Chevrolet, man, they used to be known for being tough, good, reliable vehicles. Today, you're paying top dollar for a pile of junk, in my opinion. If there's any GM, Chevrolet fans out there, don't worry. I feel the same way about Chrysler and Ford. It's a shame is what happened to the American automotive industry. It went completely downhill. Their quality control went into the tank. They were making cars that weren't lasting as good on the road anymore. I mean, at a previous job, they literally bought a brand new Silverado, and within 5,000 miles, a head gasket blew on a brand new truck. That shouldn't be happening. At my current job, I'm driving a 2020 Silverado that they're giving me for work purposes. The thing doesn't have 50,000 miles on it, and I can already feel when you go into drive and you're starting off in first gear a lot of times, the rear end's just like slamming when it's trying to shift the gears. It's like you can feel the whole rear end of the truck just completely jerking around. They're not making these things like they used to.
Well, pardon me if I don't shed a tear, 'cause they're selling make-believe and we don't buy that here.
Real quick, point out what he said. Kind of what I just pointed out there, right? Pardon me if I don't shed a tear. Like, no, I got to pull myself by my bootstraps, then so do you. And as he put it, they're selling make-believe and we don't buy that here. That's a very good way to put it. They're selling make-believe. You think that this is just, there's some innocent group of folks, these billionaires who were losing all. No. They did bad decisions. They made bad decisions as far as a business was concerned. They tried to cheat the consumer with a worse product for a higher price, and they started paying for it. People weren't buying their stuff. Their product was going, their sales were plummeting. It was going into the toilet. Nobody was buying it, and they went belly up. They're selling make-believe, and we don't buy that here. They're not innocent. Half this is their own fault, point blank, okay? And more than that, they are not even going to take the money that they got from the government to then do things on behalf of the American people. I would encourage you, because I didn't use a music video for this, but I would encourage you, go watch the music video, because at the very beginning you hear like the news clips in the background where all these people who got bailout money were caught then using bailout money that they got from the government to do things for their own personal gain instead of helping out the workers or helping out the company as a whole. They were squandering the bailout money. I mean, these people are downright crooks.
In the real world, they're shutting Detroit down, while the boss man takes his bonus pay and jets on out of town. And DC's bailing out them bankers as a farmer's auction ground. Yeah, while they're living it up on Wall Street in that New York City town, here in the real world, they're shutting Detroit down. Here in the real world, they're shutting Detroit down.
All right, take what he said right there, okay? Here in the real world, they're shutting Detroit down. So they're doing all this on TV like, oh, we need this bailout money so that we can keep Detroit afloat. But then they start shutting Detroit down after they get the money. And by the way, we were able to keep GM around for a little bit, right? But what wound up happening? GM still wound up outsourcing jobs. I mean, they just did it. Furthermore than that, let's consider the fact that even though they got the bailout, there were still a lot of people who were put out of work. When you think about all the different vehicles GM used to make before all this took place, I mean, GM was turning out Chevrolet, GMC, Buick, Pontiac, Oldsmobile. I mean, they had a lot of different vehicles, and I'm sure I'm probably missing a few that just aren't coming to me right at the moment. But there were a lot of different vehicles that fell under the GM banner, right? And a lot of them disappeared after the big GM crisis. So there were still a lot of people who lost work. For example, Pontiac, probably the one that I like the most that disappeared, because I have a Firebird. And everyone, if you know anything about the muscle cars, knows about the Trans Am. Now, the Oldsmobile Cutlass was a pretty decent muscle car for its time, too. Okay? But the Trans Am was something special, especially if you ever watched something like Smokey and the Bandit, you know, the old classic Burt Reynolds Trans Am. The Firebird was a classic. But nope, went completely away. Now, of course, they hadn't made the Firebird there for quite a few years. They quit production on the Firebird and the Camaro in 2002. But right around the time of all that, they brought the Camaro back. So had Pontiac still been around, you could have saw modern Firebird Trans Ams. And I think those have been sharp. Now, again, I just talked about how they let quality control go down. I mean, whether or not you wanted to take a gamble and spend the money on buying one, do so at your own risk. But I would still like to have seen these companies be able to stay afloat. But no, they closed a lot of that stuff down. You know, while the boss man takes his bonus pay and jets on out of town, what'd I just say? A lot of people were taking bailout money and using it for their own personal gain. DC's bailing out them bankers as the farmers auction ground. Okay? So, not only were they just bailing out like GM and stuff, but DC was bailing out all the big banks on Wall Street who were making terrible decisions there too. But where was the bailout for the little man? You know, that little man that we talked about in the Alan Jackson song. Or any of the blue-collar people around the country. Where was theirs? Didn't get one.
Well, that old man's been working in that plant most all his life. Now his pension plan's been cut in half and he can't afford to die. And it's a crying shame, 'cause he ain't the one to blame. And when I look down and see his calloused hands, well, let me tell you, friend, it gets me fighting mad.
Break down what he said right there. And again, they do a really good job at kind of showing this in the music video. The old man he's describing right there is kind of who this music video revolves around. They used the country legend Chris Christopherson to play him. But as he put that man's been working in that plant most all his life. And now his pension plan's been cut in half and he can't afford to die. Think of that, because you realize, like, if you die, there's debt that's going to come with that for your family. The cost to either have you cremated or buried, the cost to put on the funeral. I mean, you got to pay for all this stuff. And it's a pretty hefty chunk. It's a pretty hefty chunk of money. Okay? And his pension plan that he was planning on getting when he retired got cut in half. So there went half his money he was supposed to get when he retired. And now he's broke, jobless, old, so he's going to have a hard time finding a job again, losing his way of life, down on his luck, and probably depressed. He doesn't know what he's going to do going forward, and can't even afford to die. Let that sink in when you want to know what a lot of people are going through in this country. And if that doesn't grab you, you know, at the soul, then I don't know what does. You clearly don't have an empathy for working class people across this country if putting yourself in that position does nothing emotionally to you at all. I mean, that's got to be a horrible set of circumstances. But guess what? A lot of people had to live through that scenario. Didn't know how they were going to pay the bills. Didn't know how they were going to feed their families. And depressed to no end, probably sitting there thinking, I'd just be better off at this point, at this age in my life, if I would just die. But I can't even afford to do that. God, that's depressing. That really is.
Real world, they're shutting Detroit down, while the boss man takes his bonus pay and jets on out of town. And DC's bailing out them bankers as a farmer's auction ground. Yeah, while they're living it up on Wall Street in that New York City town, here in the real world, they're shutting Detroit down.
I think I left this out on the first line, but while they're living it up on Wall Street, which means these people, Wall Street, that's the people who are getting bailed out. Not just GM, but again, all the banks, Wall Street, the wealthy people were getting all the money from the bailout, and they're living it up. Meanwhile, in the rest of the world, the blue-collar man is being dumped on, put out of work, kicked out of his home, can't afford to die. As he also said, and it's a crying shame because he ain't the one to blame. You know who's to blame? It is the greedy, corrupt politicians that have been in office for so long that we can't seem to get rid of because we keep voting for the two-party system. So if hearing this story pisses you off, if hearing this message pisses you off, if hearing that this is the kind of thing people are going through all across the country who are just working class people struggling to get by, or if you are one yourself and it pisses you off, then it's time to start voting for someone outside of that two-party system. And we need to unify together so that we can make sure they stand a chance to win. I'm not just talking at the presidential level because that ain't going to solve the problem. You got to start doing this at the congressional level, at the Senate level, at the state legislature level. You really need to focus on state legislature because you need to get more independents elected to state, more third parties and independents elected to state legislatures so they can reform state laws on how easily it's going to be for third parties to run to mount an easier challenge to the two-party system. So the state is arguably just as important as the Congress, the Senate, or the presidency. So think about that. But it's time to stop voting for Democrats and Republicans. Start voting for another option because those two are doing nothing but dumping on you every chance they get. And they've proved that over and over again.
While they're living it up on Wall Street in that New York City town, here in the real world they're shutting Detroit down. Here in the real world they're shutting Detroit down. In the real world they're shutting Detroit down. They're shutting Detroit down.
Powerful song, and that's why I picked this one again to be one of the ones that I reviewed, because what he's referring to in Detroit, obviously he's talking about the automotive industry, but it's not just the automotive industry. It's plant jobs all around the country that got shut down, put out of business, and the jobs were outsourced to Mexico or wherever thanks to lousy free trade deals that incentivized the outsourcing of jobs so they could find cheaper labor at the expense of screwing over the American worker and putting them on poverty line, on government dole potentially. I mean, it's terrible. And again, if you're tired of hearing this, if you're tired of seeing this happen to our country, to our people, if you're tired of that kind of thing happening, or if it's been happening to you, then stop voting for the people who are responsible for allowing it to happen. Start voting for a different option. What do you have to lose at this point? What do you have to lose? If you keep voting for them, you know what's coming your way. A lot of us hoped Donald Trump would really make a difference on it. I don't think he did. Now, maybe you do, but I don't think he did. I think in a lot of ways he let us down. And if you say that that's because he didn't have the power because of the Congress and the Senate, the Republicans wouldn't back him enough, the Democrats obviously obstructed, then let that be a lesson that no matter who you think your outsider is, you better be making sure they get a power game in the Senate and the Congress. Because if you don't do that, they're a sitting duck and they're going to get nothing done. But it's time to unify. This is why we got to start working together. We're going to have disagreements. Like Tom McDonald said, we won't always agree. But we need to find the areas where we do agree. We need to focus on the areas where we do agree. We need to come together on those areas where we agree. We need to start winning elections and taking our country back. Then when we've got the power back to we the people, then let's debate on our disagreements. Prioritize. Fight the battle, but win the war. At the end of the day. You know? You got to pick which battle is more important so that you can win that war. So that's the message. I hope everyone liked it. Again, we have another one of those, one of these segments coming out next Monday. I don't know which genre I'm going to review, but if you have any suggestions, if you want, a certain song, send it over my way. I'll check it out. If I think it's going to be good for the segment, I might do a review on it. But drop your suggestions. Let me know what you think. If you like the video, make sure you give it a good thumbs up to help get things out there. Share it around. Share it around on Twitter, on social media. Drop comments. Interaction's good. I want to know what people think about this kind of thing because I'm trying to take music. I think music's been very influential in getting across to a lot of people over the years. So I think it's a good thing to take the music to try to reach people and get a message out there that they might not hear as well if it was just me sitting here talking. Maybe, I think music might help break down some of those barriers. So let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time.